Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio.
Welcome to the messengers in our home. Dear Kardec Radio listeners, welcome to another episode of The Messengers in Our Home. Tonight we want to talk about Chapter 5, Receiving Instructions. Hello Mackenzie.
Hi Francisca, and hello everyone from Kardec Radio. Here we are back again for another chapter of The Messengers in Our Home.
So before we start, we would like to invite you to close your eyes if you can for our opening prayer. Dear Mother, Father God, Creator of the universe and of all things, we praise you for the beauty of nature and the perfection and harmony of the laws of the universe. We thank you for our life and all the blessings that we receive every day. With our hearts filled with gratitude, we thank you for this wonderful opportunity of spending this time here on Kardec Radio, nourishing our soul with your divine law, studying together, although individually around the world, but yet together as a group. We would like to welcome the spiritual benefactors of Kardec Radio and thank them for their support, for their inspiration, knowing that they are always with us when we attune to them, elevating our thoughts and purifying our hearts. With their permission, we would like to start our meeting. So be it. So let us now listen to the reading of Chapter 5.
Chapter 5, Receiving Instructions. Aniceto was waiting for us in a large, welcoming auditorium filled with rows and rows of assistants. Men and women of apparently different ages seemed to be lost in thought, but displayed expectation and interest nevertheless. Today, explained our guide, addressing Vicente in particular, we are going to hear a lecture by Telesforo, a former worker in the Ministry of Communication. He has requested the presence of all trainees involved in the communication efforts between us and our incarnate brothers and sisters. We sat down and made ourselves comfortable. A few minutes later, Telesforo entered the auditorium to the harmonious vibrations of general congeniality. Aniceto and other instructors took their places next to him around a stately table where others in charge of the assembly were also seated. After greeting the audience, Telesforo offered his wishes of peace and encouraged us to give testimonies regarding our redemptive experiences. Then he proceeded to the main subject that had brought him there. Now, he said, authoritatively yet simply, we will address the need for representatives from our colony to do some work down on the earth. There are fellow spirits here who failed to complete their worthily conceived objectives, and there are other brothers and sisters who wish to take part in tasks that involve our area of responsibility. We are, of course, referring to communications painstaking activities on the physical plane. Right here in this auditorium, There are a large number of Nosso co-workers who failed in their missions of mediumship and instruction, as well as many others who are now preparing themselves for just such trials in the corporeal sphere. Our division has been involved in promoting a large operation designed to aid those of our incarnate and discarnate brothers and sisters who have proven to be incapable of functioning beyond the terrestrial plane. We are faced with an enormous task. We need to disseminate new teachings for preparing those who live here in our colony, taking present and future endeavors and achievements into consideration. It is vital to help those who are courageously facing the planet's profound changes. The fundamental changes of life on Earth have caught most people completely off guard as far as eternal realities are concerned. The human mind is becoming increasingly accepting and open to contact with the invisible realms within which it functions and moves. This is a type of evolutionary inevitability. We desire to, indeed we must, aid incarnate individuals. Nevertheless, vast waves of misunderstanding are working against our fraternal cooperation. We are not only speaking of actions resulting from ignorance and perversity. Spiritualism itself has arrayed many forces against us, and certain Christian teachings are fighting against us as if we are not actually in accord with the Divine Master. The Church of Rome regards our work as diabolical. The various Lutheran and Reformed churches are persecuting our well-intentioned efforts. And there are many other highly educated spiritualist schools that denounce our influence because they think that humans can become perfect overnight, instantly redeemed by a stroke of the will and without any effort at progress. In the arena of our understanding of life, however, we cannot condemn these groups for their present lack of understanding. Roman Catholicism has its reasons for being, and they are essential. Protestantism deserves our respect. The spiritualist schools possess noteworthy teachings. Every religious expression is sacred, and every uplifting act of spiritual education is holy per se. Thus, what we are actually faced with is a lack of understanding by those devoted to the good, and this is a bitter trial for all of us sincere workers because, after all, we are not doing individualistic work, but are fostering a liberating movement of human consciousness on behalf of the world's religious ideas. Clergy and theologians of organized religion and philosophy have not yet perceived that, just like the human soul, the spirit of revelation is progressive. Religious concepts evolve along with the mind of the individual. Many churches do not as yet understand that we ought not to spread the belief that unfortunate individuals are doomed to eternal torment. Instead, we must proclaim the certainty of there being hellish people who create their own personal hells. Nonetheless, we cannot waste time criticizing the stubbornness of others. We have complex and widespread services of our own to attend to. And, as we were saying, with every passing day, Earth's humankind rubs elbows, so to speak, with the invisible sphere of lower vibrations surrounding them on all sides. But we realize that an overwhelming percentage of Earth's inhabitants have not prepared themselves for today's evolutionary events. Highly agonizing conflicts are occurring in the human arena. Science is progressing at a dizzying rate on the planet, and yet, as the afflictions of the body are overcome, those of the soul increase. The newspapers are full of wonderful stories about material progress. wondrous secrets of nature are being discovered in the realms of the sea, the land, and the air, but statistics on human crime are frightening. The murders of war reveal levels of wickedness far beyond those known in former times. Homicides, suicides, marital tragedies, emotional misery, strikes, subversive revolutionary impulses, the thirst for degrading experimentation, sexual unrest, unknown diseases, and insanity are invading human homes. In no country is there enough spiritual training for physical comfort. Nevertheless, such comfort tends to increase naturally. Human beings are exerting more and more control over the exterior landscape of their planetary home, but they do not know themselves. When the body is heated, however, it will reveal the needs of the soul, and we are now witnessing individuals being overwhelmed with serious problems not only due to their own deficiencies, but also due to their close psychic proximity to the vibratory sphere of the millions of discarnates who cling to the planet's surface, anxious to renew the existence they formerly held in disdain and without the slightest concern for the designs of the Eternal One. Strictly speaking, we understand that communications work should be carried out only on the plane of divine inspiration for the earthly realms, that is, from the higher to the lower. But how are we to reach the millions of criminals and infirm individuals in the visible and invisible zones of human experience? Through mere ritualistic outward worship, as the Church of Rome proposes? Through faith alone, as the Reformation churches claim? Through a mere affirmation of the will, as certain spiritualist schools hold? We cannot limit our opinions to a unilateral view of the problem, however. We agree that faith, will, and reverence toward the Father are basic expressions of divine realization within the human being. But we cannot forget that labor is the fundamental need of every spirit. Let our brothers and sisters continue with their theological speculations, but let us, you and I, view undertaking the Lord's work as an indispensable duty. Humankind at this time is like a large collective organism whose cells, i.e., individual humans, are involved in mutual instability in a worldwide process of readjustment and redemption. Those who work with us have seen the extent of the complications with which the human mind struggles. Criminals cling to other criminals. The sick associate with the sick. We need to offer the world instruments which are adequate for correcting the spirit and which bestow upon our incarnate brothers and sisters a greater understanding of the Spirit of Christ. But to do this, we need faithful co-workers who pay no mind to conditions, compensation, or arguments, but who are interested in the sublimity of sacrifice and self-denial for the Lord. Telesforo paused and, directing a penetrating glance at the audience, said in a raised voice, "Let those who do not wish to serve look for something else to do. The ministry of communication cannot put up with wasting time on feeble experimentation without doing serious harm to unwary co-workers. In the other ministries, the assignment of workers characterizes with great precision all those who collaborate with the Divine Master. Here, however, more than just workers, we need servants who have a willing desire to help others." He took another long pause, during which I noticed how strong of an impression he had made on the audience members, who were looking at each other in inexpressible amazement. In this chapter and in the next one, we will hear these instructions from Telesforo, which is a former worker in a ministry of communication, as Andre tells us in the beginning of this chapter, and it's a summons, it's an invitation, as it is, as some prefer to call, not in a belligerent sense, but more of a really hard invitation for us to work, a call to arms, in this sense of summoning or inviting us to a very, very direct and very purposeful action in a certain sense. So these next two chapters are going to be very eye-opening for all of us. And when I say eye-opening, I really mean that, because sometimes when we mention different kind of religion, a different kind of science, a different philosophy than the one that we are trying to convey here, it may sound as if we are condemning or as if we are talking bad about the other religion, for example. But we would like to make it very clear here that we are, as Spiritists, we are certain that we have been born before this life. And since Spiritism is only at this stage right now younger than 160 years, so Spiritism was born less than 160 years before this date that we are recording, it is very, very unlikely that we've been Spiritists before this life. So we could have been Catholic or Protestant or even spiritualist to some degree in a previous life. So we're not talking bad about either the person or the doctrine in itself, but we are reflecting, and that's what the Telesforo is going to do to us here. We are reflecting upon what we keep building for ourselves at this very moment. So I'd like to make this very clear, because Telesforo is going to mention Roman Catholicism, Protestantism, and spiritualism, and he's going to mention some things that we did in the past, and that to some degree we keep doing in the present time, even as Spiritists. So as we keep studying these books, we really need to understand that all these teachings are to be reflected upon ourselves, right? In my case here, upon myself, and in the case of you guys who are listening to us now, reflected upon every single one of us, not to be put towards other people and to blame people or to say what other people need to be doing, right? It is not. It is the intent of these books are never to say what other people should be doing, but for us to reflect on what we should be doing to ourselves and to others more specifically. That's why we keep coming back to the idea of serving, right? Serving and serving others. And that's what these two chapters are basically about, chapters 5 and 6, which we're going to start today with chapter 5, as we already said, and then next week with chapter 6, when Telesforo finalizes this meeting that he's going to start conducting in a few minutes. So, having said all that, let's just go straight ahead to the chapter. And what Andre starts by telling us that Aniceto was waiting for all of them in the large auditorium, and then there were lots of spirits, men and women, different ages, every single one of them, maybe talking to themselves and lost in thoughts, as he says here, but they were expecting and showing interest for what's about to happen. And Vicente comes to them, specifically to Andre and the group that are together at this very moment, and say that they're all going to hear a lecture by Telesforo. He's a former worker in the Ministry of Communication. And as we did to a few names of characters here in No Solar, we would also like to tell a little bit about the name Telesforo, because it really shows what is the goal of what Telesforo wants to do here. And talking about goal, that's basically what his name is about, right? It's like it's a bringer. He is a bringer of how to reach the goal that we are setting for ourselves. So that's basically what the name Telesforo means, is the one that brings the best outcome of what the summons is going to be. So here he's going to give instructions to summon, to invite everybody to work in this task of becoming these messengers, of becoming these communicators, to bring good messages and to help we who are incarnated, and also those who want to reincarnate and become these mediums to bring messages from the ones who are discarnated to the ones who are incarnated. So Telesforo is this name that means, okay, here I am, and I'm going to show you what we need to do to reach our goals. That's basically what he is at this very moment. And because of this, he's going to be really tough sometimes, because for us to really achieve our goals, we need to be tough. Not to the others, right? We need to be tough to ourselves. Sometimes we may cross some lines and so on and so forth, but the meaning of tough that I want to convey here is being tough to ourselves, right? To be indulgent to other people's mistakes, but to ourselves to become the best that we can, and calling ourselves when we are not able to do something that we need and we know that we need to do. So Telesforo is going to give us instructions, but not mere instructions, as I told already, and I repeat myself here. He's summoning ourselves. He's summoning all of us to really pay attention and do what we really need to do our tasks, not to try to solve all the world's problems, but to be the best that we can do in what we need to do. So Vicente finalizes saying that Telesforo requested the presence of all trainees involved in communication efforts between us and the incarnate brothers and sisters. So they all sat down, made themselves comfortable, and waited a few minutes for Telesforo when he entered the auditorium, and everybody had their minds elevated with harmonious vibration. And this is really interesting for us to reflect upon when we are gathered together for a meeting, be it a congress, a symposium, wherever we are, right, that need where we're going to hear somebody. It is really interesting for us to try to keep the place where we are in harmony, and this harmony begins within ourselves. So if we keep trying to keep our focus on what's needed, keep our voices down so that the environment is very calm and peaceful from within and then to the exterior of ourselves. But then Andre continues and says that Aniceto and some other instructors took their places next to Telesforo, and there was this table where they were all sitting together, and there are a group of people sat there. After they all greeted the audience, Telesforo offered his wishes of peace and invited the audience, the assistants, to give testimonies regarding their redemptive experiences. And Andre doesn't mention anything else about this, but I gather that this specific piece here would say that this conversation is not just coming from the ones who know more or who need to have something to say, but also to engage in this conversation, right? So they all start to to have this conversation in the beginning, and they are all sharing their experiences, so that Telesforo, in this case here, knows more or less who the audience really is, so that he can address them in a certain specific way, which is really interesting, because, and that reminds me of when we're going to talk to somebody, right? When we're going to give a lecture or to give a talk to a certain group of people, that we need to know a little bit about those spirits or those people who are right there, so that we don't start talking about something which is completely unrelated, or in a manner that is nobody or almost nobody can relate to what we are talking about. Naturally, if we are the ones who are going to a lecture, we need to prepare for what the lecture is going to be about. So we don't go to a lecture about, let's say, medicine if I don't know basic terms of medicine. Otherwise, I will be there and I'll miss and lose basically all the information that's going to be there. Meaning, if I go to a symposium about medicine, and I'm not even a nurse, or I never studied anything about medicine, what am I going to do there, right? But also, there are some doctors that may want to give information to people that live on the streets, and naturally his presentation or her presentation will have to adapt to the level of those people who are there, so that they all and we all can understand what he or she is saying. So whenever we are going to talk to somebody, we need to think about, well, okay, what is the audience? And if I didn't have the chance to do that prior to what I'm about to talk to somebody, I need to gather at least a small data there, so that I know how to adapt to that situation. And I'm not saying that this is the case here with Telesforo. What I'm saying is this is a good time to say something about this. And with this conversation in the beginning of before starting the talk, it could be a very good way for us to know a little bit more about the audience, and adapt a little bit, maybe the language, maybe adjust the contents to what we're about to say, so that we can relate deeply with the audience. And then Telesforo proceeds to the main subject that had taken him right there to talk to everybody. And then he starts by saying, now we will address the need for representatives from our colony to do some work down on the earth. So what he's telling us here is that this talk is going to be for those who have the responsibility of being these messengers. And that's the name of the book, right? However, we need to really think deeply about this, what is to be this messenger. I know I'm repeating myself from last week and from the previous week, but if we really stop to think about what he's saying here, is that we all need to understand this, regardless of what activity I am doing, anywhere I am. Because to be a messenger is not to relay the message. And that's the repeating part here. It's not to open the mouth and say something. It is about becoming the message, right? And that's why I keep repeating this, because otherwise there may be some of us who are listening to this right now who say, oh, I'm not a medium. I'm not going to be a person who likes to talk about the gospel or about spiritism or about my religion in front of everybody. But if I don't understand the message, if I don't take that message to my life, right, as if I am living that message, as if I am becoming that message, I am going to be among those who failed to complete our objectives, as he says here. Because I need to be, for example, if I am not a person who speaks, or if I am not a medium, I need to be the best, let's say, parent that I can be. I need to be the best boss that I can be. I need to be the best worker that I can be wherever I am. And becoming that message, I will become and I will be able to fulfill my mission, quote unquote here, the objective that I set for myself before incarnated. So, and he says, okay, of course we are referring to communications, painstaking activities on the physical plane. But what I'm saying, once again, is that this communication is any type of communication. It's not just the communication that comes from my mouth, that comes from the spirit within a spiritist mediumistic session. No, it's about what I am communicating while I am looking at another person, while I am doing my work, right? Am I communicating laziness, or am I communicating I'm here to really do what I need to do? Right? So, and he says, right here in this auditorium, there are a large number of No Solar School workers who failed in their missions of mediumship and instruction, as well as many others who are now preparing themselves for just such trials in the corporeal sphere. So once again, he is talking about these two specific tasks, mediumship and instruction, and these are very important ones, because we are communicating not only with my body and with my actions, but I'm also going to be communicating through my voice, right, through my mediumship, be it writing or psychographic mediumship, or I don't know, talking and letting the spirits talk through me and give an oral message through me, so, or any other kind of mediumship. But it's about what I am communicating through myself, right? My actions, my thoughts. But coming back to what he's saying, our division, or their division, has been involved in promoting a large operation designed to aid those of our incarnate and discarnate brothers and sisters who have proven to be incapable of functioning beyond the terrestrial plane. It is interesting to notice here, let's repeat the last part of this paragraph. Discarnate brothers and sisters who have proven to be incapable of functioning beyond the terrestrial plane. He is basically, to some degree here, talking about the materialistics. The people that either don't believe or don't want to believe that there's nothing else beyond the terrestrial plane, that everything can be solved and will be solved only through things that are on the terrestrial plane. And what Telesphore is telling us is that their division is trying to help, right? Trying to aid those people who are incarnates to understand that there is something beyond matter. And what we will notice is that he's not only talking about, as I mentioned before, only about the materialistic ones. He, even to some degree, and we will see that, he is even inviting us to think that we, ourselves, even if and when we believe, and when believing that there's another life, that we really don't take that idea seriously. It is as if we know, but as if we don't want to know, because we don't take that into consideration. That's what he's telling us here, because some of us, we are spiritists, and we keep living as if there is no consequence to what we are doing right now. He won't say this with these words, but it is as if that's what he wants to tell us. Let's see if we can really understand that from what he's going to tell us. We are faced with an enormous task. We need to disseminate new teachings for preparing those who live here in our colony, taking present and future endeavors and achievements into consideration. Do we really take present and future endeavors and achievements into consideration? Do we really do that? Right? Or do we live only for the now? Right? Because there is a difference in living now and living for the now. Right? I can live now and think that everything that I do, everything that I think, every action that I take is building my future. Or I can live for now and say, oh, I don't bother about the future because what I have is now. The only thing that I have is what I have now at this very moment. Do we take present and future endeavors and achievements into consideration in our lives, even as spiritists? And I'm not talking here about other religions, as I said in the beginning. We're talking about ourselves as when we look at ourselves at this very moment. And he goes on, it is vital to help those who are courageously facing the planet's profound changes. We are facing profound changes, but are we boldly facing these changes and changing with them and understanding our role, our duties, our tasks in these changing times, thinking about the future, not our future or my personal future, but everybody's future? But he goes on, and he says that these changes in life, and remember, he is talking here in 1945, 44, 45, and how much more have we changed since then as a society, right? What have we been doing from that time to right now? And what are we to do from now on? He says, the human mind is becoming increasingly accepting and open to contact with the invisible realms, within which it functions and moves. This is a type of evolutionary inevitability. We desire to, indeed we must, aid incarnate individuals. Nevertheless, vast waves of misunderstanding are working against our fraternal cooperation. These days, despite we seeing all those notices of intolerance around the world regarding religion or anything related to that, we see more and more tolerance in our day-to-day lives than we saw in the past. And when I talk about tolerance, I'm not saying that there isn't intolerance. What I'm saying is that in the past, for example, if a person was a spiritist, let's say in Brazil, at the time when the book was written, people were being called names, and people were being say, "Oh, this person is a spiritist. He deals with the devil and all those things," and there will be lots of intolerance from society. And now it is completely different with regards to Spiritism, for example. And we can, if we go back in history, we will see that against Protestantism in the past, against Islam, and these days we are much more accepting than we were in the past. We're still far away from being really accepting of everything, but we improved. These days, of course, we see much more because we have information available to us at any time, right? Through our cell phones, for example, we see everything that happens all around the world. Anything that's news, that TVs and all these news outlets want to show us, we will be able to see, because a person just needs to snap their cell phone and then start recording and then send it through any of these social media outlets, and we will be able to see what's going on. So we see more. But in the past, we didn't have that. So we didn't know how much of that used to happen, and we were not aware of. But now we are aware of. So we think there is much more than was in the past. I don't really and sincerely don't believe so. What I believe is that we only see more because we have more access to it. So we are improving as a society. But naturally, some of these things that need to be improved and need to change take some time, and everything that needs to change encounters and faces opposition until we figure out what is the best for everybody. And what Telesphore is telling us, that even when we are trying to help and we are trying to be fraternal to other people, using these communication skills, which we're talking about here is mediumship. We're not even talking about spiritism at this moment. We're talking about mediumship and fraternal help through mediumship, right? And then he says that we find people who are against it. Naturally, they don't know it, so it's natural, unfortunately natural for many of us, right, to fight against it until we understand and we comprehend. And what he says is we are not only speaking of actions resulting from ignorance and perversity. So what he's saying is, if we are trying to help and we face those people who want to work against ourselves, but this is not only from ignorance and perversity. It's just because of the way we believe things. And then that's when he mentions spiritualism. And remember what we just talked. We're talking about, we know that we keep living once our body dies. So spiritualism is spiritualist is every person, everybody that believes that we are spirits, right? That we continue. But even though when we try to talk about these communications, some people just go against it, and without taking their time to notice what the messages are trying to convey. That's what Telesphore is telling us here. Spiritualism itself has arrayed many, many forces against us, and certain Christian teachings are fighting against us, against these mediums, against these communications, as if we are not actually in accord with the Divine Master, with Jesus. And then he mentions here, the Church of Home regards our work as diabolical. The various Lutheran and Reformed churches are persecuting our well-intentioned efforts. And there are many other highly educated spiritualist schools that denounce our influence because they think that humans can become perfect overnight, instantly redeemed by a stroke of the will and without any effort at progress. See, what he is trying to convey to us here is every type and denominational church or denominational faith has a certain set of beliefs, right? And when comes something that is not exactly in accord to their core beliefs at that very moment, and that they see as if something that's against what they're teaching, naturally they are going to try to stop it. But we know, once we start reading and studying, that this is not diabolical, this is not to be persecuted, and what we are teaching is that we don't become perfect overnight, that we need to work towards our perfection. We can become better, but we need to make an effort. So what Telesphore is trying to convey to us here is that we will face obstacles, and we need to really understand this so that we can be prepared to face these problems. So once again, he's citing these things because these are well-known barriers that we usually find. And we need to understand that if we really believe in what we are trying to achieve, even when we find these problems, these obstacles, our goal needs to be set, needs to be clear, and we need to keep working, taking present and future endeavors and achievements into consideration, not only living for that moment, for the glory of that moment. Or when we find a wall that's really big, and we say, oh, I can't climb that wall, and then I stop right there and come back. Because remember, he just said that many of us who were there at that assembly had failed their tasks. And why? Maybe he's giving some of the reasons why here. Because we found people saying that we were doing works that were diabolical. Or because we found persecution. Or because we thought that, oh, this church, this segment of the society says that we don't need to do anything. We just need to wait to die and follow this idea, and we will be, quote unquote here, saved or instantly redeemed by a stroke of the will and without any effort at progress. And then we stop and say, okay, here I already reached what I need, and then we stop working. And that we don't need and we can't condemn those groups who are trying to stop what the mediums are trying to do, or the message that we are trying to convey. And that's what Telesforo tells us. And that's what Telesforo tells us. In the arena of our understanding of life, and when he says our, he's putting ourselves in this arena of understanding of life. Remember, we are the ones that need to understand the others. I am the one who need to do something. We cannot condemn these groups for their present lack of understanding. If I think that I understand more, I cannot condemn anybody. Even if I don't understand, I cannot condemn. But it is natural that when I don't understand, that I don't know best, I usually tend to see the other as somebody who needs to be condemned. Isn't this our history? Right? I think that I know everything that I need to do, and then I start condemning other groups that don't follow what I think. So, if I already achieved a level that tells me that I don't know everything, and the other one is the one who is condemning me, why will I be condemning the other one, doing exactly the same thing that the other group or the other person is doing to me? If I am doing this, I really didn't still understand the do unto others what you want the others to do to you. If I'm doing exactly the same thing that they're doing to me. And he says, we cannot condemn. For example, Roman Catholicism has its reasons for being, and they are essential. There's a necessity, there's a need to that the Catholic Church is there. And they are essential. There are lots of spirits who need their faith. And that's all right, because it's not the church that saves. And we understand that. Is what a person that's in the church, what they do with the teachings, right? Protestantism deserves our respect. Of course. Lots of teachings, lots of things in common. And because I don't agree with this or that, then they are bad and we are better? Why? There's no sense in this. We are all in the same boat, right? Or on the same earth, on the same ship, floating around the universe. The spiritualist schools possess noteworthy teachings. Every religious expression is sacred, and every uplifting act of spiritual education is holy per se. Every single one of them. So why do we keep persecuting people that are different, that follow different religions than the one that we do? What the others are doing to this or that religion or to Spiritism, it is not a problem of Spiritism. The problem is when we, as a Spiritist, or us, or I, as a Spiritist, start persecuting, condemning, talking bad things about other religions, that shows more about me than shows about the religion or the person that I'm talking about. The more bad things I talk about a person, the more I know myself, and the less I know the other person. Because if the other person, the other religion has a problem, and I am not that person, and I am not of that religion, what am I have to do with that religion? Only from the outside, just talking and talking and talking. However, if I am in contact with that person, or if I am in contact with that religion, even being from a different religion, but if we have a way of talking together and trying to understand together different things, then we can be of use, but not to condemn other people, to condemn other religions. So what we are facing is a lack of understanding by those devoted to the good. That's what Telesforo keeps going here. And this is a better trial for all of us sincere workers, because, after all, we are not doing individualistic work, but we are fostering a liberating movement of human consciousness on behalf of the world's religious ideas. So this idea of being this messenger, of being a messenger through mediumship, through this idea of being a server of the world, is not to improve the religion that I follow, but it is to improve the world's religious ideas. So it's a universal movement. It's not an individualistic work. That's why it is so hard, because it is as if one person is trying to do the work that a lot of people are not doing. But if I start doing, if Francisca in Germany start doing, if you guys who are listening to us start doing, and each one of us start doing and having this movement of trying to communicate these ideas through our words, through our podcasts, through the radio, through the television, but most and more importantly, through our actions in our day-to-day lives, it will be faster than if only one person start doing. Although there can be people from time to time who can have really high impact on lives, but it is much better if we have a lot of people, a group of people doing that work together. Hopefully, we are those sincere workers that Telesforo is mentioning here in this paragraph, and that we can understand the bitter trial that we are facing, if we are facing the bitter trial. But if we are not facing that trial, that we are doing the best that we can to really promote this liberating movement of human consciousness, independently of the religion that we are linked to, that our hearts are linked to. Because, as he says in the next paragraph, clergy and theologians of organized religion and philosophy have not yet perceived that, just like the human soul, the spirit of revelation is progressive. And our question here is, who are those clergy and theologians of organized religion and philosophy? Do we, as people that like Spiritism, that study Spiritism, do we fit in this category that he just created here, that he just mentioned here? Aren't we, to some degree, sometimes theologians of organized religion? And that we want to cast an iron claw around these teachings, and that we don't allow any other idea to come and to show that the spirit of revelation is progressive? Religious concepts, he goes on, evolve along with the mind of the individual. We are evolving. How many things were deemed to be wrong in the past that are not even thought about these days? And then he mentions one, for example, that sometimes we still spread the belief that people who did evil things The unfortunate individuals are doomed to eternal torment. This is something really of the past. That today what we need to proclaim is that we are certain that there are some people who are creating their own personal hells. So it's a matter of our own creation, but this is not an eternal thing. It is eternal while we are living it. But if we don't understand that these torments are going to have an end, and if we don't teach this now, have we really evolved from what we were in the past as a religious concept? So this is one example of something that was really, really different in the past, and that these days we notice and that we understand that it is different, that it was just a perception of the human mind at that stage or that level. So we need to do things differently today. We already are, but we need to keep evolving on that idea of doing more and more. But he says, okay, but let's not waste time criticizing the stubbornness of others. And are we criticizing our stubbornness? He goes on, we have complex and widespread services of our own to attend to. So what he's saying here is that sometimes we spend so much time talking about and criticizing, wasting time, telling and complaining about, oh, I can't do better because this or that, because that person, because that church, or because that religion. We need to do what we need to do. We need to do what we have to do. So, what is our task? With every passing day, he goes on, Earth's humankind rubs elbows with the invisible sphere of lower vibrations surrounding them on all sides. But we realize that an overwhelming percentage of Earth's inhabitants have not prepared themselves for today's evolutionary events. Highly agonizing conflicts are occurring in the human arena. And then he mentioned something that's even more current today than it was when he made this speech. He says, science is progressing at a dizzying rate on the planet, and yet, as the afflictions of the body are overcome, those afflictions of the soul increase. Isn't this very, very current these days? We cure the body, we give medicine, we have lots of wondrous surgeries, people returning to walk, people getting rid of really deadly diseases that were very deadly like 50 years ago, 6 years ago, and then these days we live longer lives. But what are we doing with the afflictions of the soul? Is medicine curing the diseases of the soul? What are we doing towards that goal of the afflictions? These days, what is the worst disease, or the disease of the century, as I heard some people call? Depression. What is causing depression? Naturally, there is the imbalance of some parts of the body, right? Some hormones, part of the brain, and there are medications for that. But why are we so depressed? Why are we so stressed? Right? These are not diseases of the body. It afflicts the body too, and we give a medicine to cure or help the body to recover, but are we really going in solving and fixing the problem? He goes on, wondrous secrets of nature are being discovered in the realms of the sea, the land, and the air, but statistics on human crime are frightening. The murders, homicides, suicides, marital tragedies, strikes, emotional misery, and he goes on and on and on. these things are invading human homes. What is the cause of that? Is this a physical problem that we need a medicine for it? He goes on and says, in no country there is enough spiritual training for physical comfort. Nevertheless, such comfort tends to increase naturally. Human beings are exerting more and more control over the exterior landscape of their planetary home, but they do not know themselves. Do we know ourselves? And we as Spiritists know that in the Spirit's book, there's this question, right? What should man do to become a better person? He said, well, know thyself. Question 919 of the Spirit's book. What is the most effective means for improving ourselves in this life and for resisting the draw of evil? That's Kardec's question 919. And then the Spirits answer, a sage of antiquity has told you, know thyself. So this is a major teaching of the Spiritist doctrine, of Spiritism. Do we know ourselves? And when I ask, do we know ourselves? I'm not just asking a Spiritist audience here. I'm asking every single one of us human beings. I know it is a very tough question when we think about 7 billion people, right? Incarnate spirits right now. It's a tough task to accomplish. But we don't even start thinking about ourselves. And then we want to change the others. But he goes on, when the body is heated, however, it will reveal the needs of the soul. And we are now witnessing individuals being overwhelmed with serious problems, not only due to their own deficiencies, but also due to their close psychic proximity to the vibratory sphere of the millions of discarnates who cling to the planet's surface. So, Telesphore is reminding us here that one of the big problems that we usually don't know how to deal and that we are sometimes not even aware of is that I not only have my personal problems, but if I don't know myself and I don't stop thinking of bad things, there will be a lot of other spirits around me, surrounding me, that will cling to my desires and my wishes and will potentialize these wishes. And then things start growing worse and worse. That's why we need to start with ourselves. We cannot do for others. We need to start within, doing the best that we can, doing from within, not for within, but from within to the exterior, starting from me to the outside. And we are anxious, these spirits, right? They are anxious to renew the existence that they formerly held in disdain and without the slightest concern for the designs of the Eternal One. So, what are the designs of God, of our Creator? Are we aware of it? Do we really understand the first commandment? Love God above all things. Do we really understand it? How much have we really stopped to think about this? What is God's position in our lives? We don't have the time to discuss this here because Telesphore keeps saying so many things, so many interesting things. But this is something that we really should stop and think. As Jesus says, as the person comes, stops him and asks him, Master, what is the biggest commandment? Love God above all things. But here you have a second one, which is similar to the first one. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. But love God above everything. We tend to focus on the second one, which is similar to the first one. So it is also necessary. And if we do the second one, we will be doing the first one. But how much do we stop to think about what it is? What does it mean to love God? To understand the designs of the Eternal One, as Telesforo puts here, to understand God's designs for my personal life, for our personal life. But he goes on, he says, strictly speaking, we understand that communications work should be carried out only on the plane of divine inspiration for the earthly realms, that is, from the higher to the lower. And so, what he is asking us here is to think about the higher purpose. And that's why he says that these works, communications work, should be carried out with highly evolved spirits working on the earthly realms. But what he says is, this is not possible, because this is our work. We are all together. So we cannot wait for great people to do everything. We have to do it ourselves. Every single creature has its part on creating a better place. How can we do it only through words? How can we do it only through messages? We need to put our hands to work. That's what he's calling us here to do. How can we get to the low points of human life on earth if we don't go there to do it? Are we going to do this only through mere ritualistic and outward worship, as the Church of Rome proposes? As I said in the beginning, he is mentioning here at this very moment, he is showing us what culture shows us how to do things. It's just as in outward worship. That needs to be our question. Are we only worshiping outwardly, only saying prayers, only going to the Spiritist Center? Is that how we think that the world is going to change? Or do we believe, as the Reformation churches claim sometimes, that we are going to change through faith alone? That once we believe that everything is changed and it doesn't matter what we do anymore? Or through a mere affirmation of the will, as certain spiritualist schools hold? Oh, yeah, do it, and then let the others do it? Those are the questions that we see outside, situations that we see outside, but that we need to take within and ask ourselves, aren't we doing the same thing as we are criticizing sometimes? And that's where we come back to the previous paragraph when he starts saying we cannot waste time criticizing the stubbornness of others. We're not criticizing because we keep doing it. The same thing. We criticize and we don't do it when we have the chance. And we don't do it also when we don't have the chance. We use an excuse and say, oh no, I can't do it. Well, that's okay. It's our choice. He says, Telesforo says, we agree that faith, will, and reverence toward the Father are basic expressions of divine realization within the human being. This is all fine. This is all great. There's no problem. And we agree that the will, the reverence, and the faith are very important. But if we are on those three, there's something is missing. And what is missing? The labor, the service part. We cannot forget, he goes on, that labor is the fundamental need of every spirit. We need to work. So let our other brothers and sisters continue with their theological speculations. But let us, and then here he is very clear, you and I. So he's putting himself into the mix. Because we all need to undertake this, to undertake the Lord's work as an indispensable duty. Oh, I can know a lot about the Scriptures. I know a lot about these mediumistic works that I see throughout the United States, throughout the world. I know a lot about our other people's faiths. I already know and made lots of courses on religious integration, on traditions around the world. What am I doing to work towards a better world? It's for each one of us to respond, and we will respond differently to these questions. But we need to work. If we don't do it, that's fine. It's our choice of not doing. Not doing is also a choice. It's our free will. I can choose. But it's a choice in the end, not doing it. And naturally, as choosing or not choosing, there is always responsibility connected to it. Humankind, he goes on, and he will make a metaphor here, at this time is like a large collective organism whose cells, i.e., individual humans, so each one of us, our cells, are involved in mutual instability in a worldwide process of readjustment and redemption. So we are all connected. Once a part of an organism starts getting sick, it is very hard for the whole organism not getting sick. Some are smaller. If you hit your very small finger or toe in your foot in a corner of a table, it doesn't matter if you're big or if you're small. Your whole body suffers. So we need to understand that we are all connected. If one small piece of the world is suffering, the world is suffering. It may not be the biggest suffering, but it is a suffering nonetheless. And what are we doing to change that? We are in this path of readjustment and redemption. But it's not an automatic process. It may be somewhat automatic for the whole world, but each cell has its own importance on the process. And if that cell doesn't do its work, it will have to be removed from the body. Because a cell that's sick and that's causing a problem to the body needs to recycle. But if I want to work, we can all be redeemed. We can all be readjusted. That's for us. But he goes on, and we are getting close to the end of this first part of this chapter here. Those who work with us have seen the extent of the complications with which the human mind struggles. When he says that, he is talking to all of us who already started to wake up for the situation that he's about to tell us. That criminals cling to other criminals, for example, and that the sick associate with the sick. Meaning that we already understand that the more I tend to get stuck on the same level of spirituality, the more I tend to cling to vices, to things that are bad, I will attract more and more spirits of the same level. And that will make it harder and harder for me to get out of this. It's not impossible, but it makes things much more complicated. So he is talking to us who already understand this, and he says, we need to offer the world instruments which are adequate for correcting the spirit, and which bestow upon our incarnate brothers and sisters a greater understanding of the Spirit of Christ. So he's telling us, hey, we need to do something to give tools to other people so that they can work together with us to help reduce this problem in the world. Not to solve the problem of the other person, but to help them solve their own problems so that they can become healthier without the need of having a person at all times by their side doing stuff for them. Just like a child that needs to be helped with their homework, but that doesn't need a person to do the homework every day for her. Otherwise, the child will not learn how to do it by herself or himself. So we need to provide tools, and that's what we are doing here at Kardec Radio. We are reflecting together so that we personally have tools to deal with our own difficulties, and hopefully that we can help other people understand these tools and use these tools to themselves. Not to change others, but to change ourselves. We need to understand the Spirit of Christ. And what it is, this Spirit of Christ that he tells us here, is the Spirit of sacrifice, which it is very hard for us to understand. And when I say understand, I'm not saying that it's hard to comprehend on an intellectual level, but to really understand deep within ourselves. Because understanding here means practicing. Once again, going back to what I've been repeating these past few chapters, becoming the living letters. And he says, right? But to do this, to offer these world instruments, we need faithful co-workers. Because it is as if he's saying, I am not going to be able to do everything by myself. I can do it, and I will do the best that I can, but we need co-workers. But not only simple co-workers that stop by and say, hey, I'm here to do it, and do it for 2 hours and go away. No, we need co-workers who pay no mind to conditions, compensation, or arguments. We're not here to, I'm going to do this only if you... No, you can work elsewhere. We don't need a person that keeps putting conditions to work. I'm just going to work if you give me this back. So sorry, this is not for here. You can get compensation in a different type of work, and that's fine. Or if I tell you something, I invite you to work, and then you say, but this. No, I don't need arguments here. I need a worker. So if you're here for conditions, compensations, or arguments, we don't need you in this type of work. You can go elsewhere. There will be lots of works where you can do this, and that's perfectly fine. Here, we want co-workers who pay no mind to conditions, compensation, or arguments, but who are interested in the sublimity of sacrifice and self-denial for the Lord. Jesus understood this, and he was interested in the sublimity of sacrifice and self-denial for God. He understood this, and he showed us how to do it. He denied himself. He sacrificed himself to show us what we need to do to understand what service really is. That's the type of worker that Telesforo is asking here. And then he pauses. He looks at every single one of us. And he says in a raised voice, let those who do not wish to serve look for something else to do. Look, we have free will. If we don't wish to serve, there's something else to do. We can do it. It's the free will. There's nobody forcing us to do it. There's no problem. If you don't want to serve here, hey, you can go to a different type of work. You can go to a lot of different types of services that there are in the world. However, and he goes on, the Ministry of Communication cannot put up with wasting time on feeble experimentation without doing serious harm to unwary co-workers. In the other ministries, the assignment of workers characterizes with great precision all those who collaborate with the divine measure. with the Divine Master. Here, however, more than just workers, we need servants who have a willing desire to help others. We don't need mere workers. That's what Telesphoro is telling us. For this type of work, of improving ourselves in helping other people, we need servants. So if we are really interested in communicating the message of God, the message of the Christ, we need servants. Workers are good, but not for this specific type of service. For this, we need servants. And then he takes a long pause, during which Andre notices how strong of an impression he made on the audience members, who were looking at each other in inexpressible amazement. Telesphoro makes a huge impression, and he should have done this, because this type of work is a work that is very serious, that is very important, not only for ourselves, but for the world. And if we are willing to do something in that matter, let's become servants, interested in the sublime sacrifice and self-denial for the Lord. Yes, he also said, as I told in the beginning, this is a very tough call, but it's also a wake-up call for a lot of us. Hopefully, we are all awake and working already. It is tough. It is a hard work, but it is a work that is necessary to be done. And if we are here listening to this, studying this book, and if you already read the book, you'll know how difficult it is, because we will start seeing in a few weeks some examples of spirits who were prepared and came here on earth to do certain kinds of work and that failed, as Telesphoro said. Hopefully, we are not amongst those who are failing. Hopefully, we are doing what we can, self-sacrificing, self-denying for the Lord, imposing no conditions, not expecting compensations, and not arguing, but serving. As he said, once again, we need servants who have a willing desire to help others. Hopefully, we are in that position of servants while being brothers and sisters in this planet. We will take another long pause of a week, and hopefully next week we will all be together for Chapter 6, when Telesphoro finalizes his speech with profound warnings. May God bless us all for the whole week ahead. See you next time, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio, broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.